numbers. And if you find you're tuning into a wave, well then I don't know much about being saved.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, friends.
Welcome into another episode of Spiritual Philosophy Chatter with the Joneses. I'm Danny Jones.
And I am Samantha Jones.
And here we are, episode 126.
126.
26 is in there.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That is one of my favorite numbers.
What's our topic?
This is Roswell, 1947.
I love it.
Yes.
Cool.
It's good stuff.
Excited to talk about this one.
Yeah,
it's
me
kind
too.
Of my bag of tricks. I like these things.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Well, before we do that, do you have anything you want to share from last week?
Yes, we have all of our usual stuff, but let's see. So last week we did How Did It All Begin? And at the end, I did a reading for Beatrice. And Beatrice, she gave me some feedback on the reading. I edited this because a lot of it is personal information, and I just felt like it didn't need to be out there. So My edited version is, thank you, my sweet friend, for the reading you did for my dear friend Marilyn. You have no idea how very, very much it meant, especially today when my soul aches as I feel like I am at my lowest point. As I was leaving for work, heartbroken, I asked my angels for a sign or to help me stop hurting, even if it meant dying today. She was really depressed. That's why I cut out a lot of that. I couldn't believe my ears when I heard the reading. I knew it was a team effort from my angels, Marilyn, and you. Thank you, thank you. Keep me in your prayers. So Marilyn was basically telling her, just to recap, that she wishes that she would have had more life in her. She died of an overdose, but she wasn't upset that she would, it was okay that she was going to die of an overdose when she was human. Like, it's not okay now, but when she was human, she was like, if I die this way, it's okay. And now looking back at it, she says it's not okay. Like, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I would have understood how precious life was. And so that was very much something that Beatrice needed to hear that day. And it was a gift from Marilyn to do that, because going into that episode, I had another reading set up. And when Beatrice posted Marilyn, I was like, I need to do this one. Like, there's a reason I need to do this one. And so there's the reason. Wow. I always listen to my intuition on that because it knows more than I do. So thank you for the feedback, Beatrice, and I hope that things are getting better.
And thank you for the wonderful message.
Yes.
What was the other person you connected with?
Marilyn.
Marilyn.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because
thank you, Marilyn.
That really is the truth.
Yes.
I believe.
Absolutely. So, yes, thank you, Marilyn, for coming through and getting my attention and doing that for sure.
Nice.
So, and then we do 2 questions every week that our listeners ask. So the first question I thought was really interesting because we're kind of going through this a little bit right now ourselves. This is from Shannon. She said, I was told my dog Stella is my childhood dog reincarnated, but their personalities don't match, other than they were or are both amazing dogs. I thought we kept our personalities when we reincarnated. Am I wrong? Thanks in advance. So it's funny because I've talked about waiting for this dog, Betty, that we got last week, and how I was waiting for Sequoia to reincarnate and thinking that this was going to be Sequoia. Well, after showing Nisha, who's also an animal communicator and medium, she believes that Betty is the reincarnation of my childhood dog, Ripple, who is the first dog that I communicated with. I don't remember anything about Ripple. Nothing at all, except for that. Like, I don't remember her mannerisms or anything.
Right.
But Betty does sometimes do things like Sequoia, and it does make me think, is it her? Now, personality-wise, we take certain things, but we don't have our whole personality. Like the dog that you have now, it very well could be, I should ask for a picture. It very well could be your dog from when you were a child. Absolutely. Even if they act completely different. It really doesn't matter. They don't know that they're the reincarnation. Like, let's say that Betty is the reincarnation of Ripple. She doesn't know that.
Right.
And I wouldn't be able to tell you if they do have similar mannerisms. I just wouldn't. But
Right.
I believe that all of our animals continuously reincarnate to us.
Mm-hmm.
How many souls there are, I'm not sure. Like, I've had a lot of animals, and sometimes at once I've had like 10. So there's probably at least 10 different souls there, you know?
Right.
But I believe they keep coming back to us, and their
Right.
personalities do change every time.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that there are things in there that maybe, you know, we might be able to pick out. Do you know what I mean? Like, we might be able to see, like, okay, if this was Sequoia, if Betty was Sequoia, maybe she would like bananas, and she hates bananas. That was Sequoia's favorite food. Or, like, Sequoia was a vacuum cleaner, basically went around and picked up all the crumbs. Yeah, Betty doesn't do that. So there's a lot of things that are different about their personalities, but there are a lot of things that are similar, you know?
Yeah. I mean, but is that really a personality trait as much as a...
An individual, yeah. See, that's the thing, is like, I don't necessarily believe that I'll go into my next life with my love of bananas. Like, I love bananas, but I don't know that in my next life I will love bananas.
Yeah,
so why would, you know, an animal be any different? If that animal loved bananas, like Sequoia did, then why does that animal have to love bananas in the next life?
Right.
So I think that I think maybe we look too deep into it and think that they're supposed to act too similar. I think it's more, to be honest with you, about the connection, about the way this animal makes you feel. Like, Betty and I have this connection that I can't explain. Whatever dog she is, it doesn't matter because there's a connection there.
Right. Yeah,
you know? So that's what it is. That's where you feel it in your soul, that it's like, this dog was meant for me, that we have this connection. That is more what I think I would focus on than the personality themselves, is my advice on that.
That's good.
Yeah. So that was Shannon's question. I'm doing something weird today. Let's see. And then Shauna asked this. Why do some people choose not to acknowledge their psychic abilities, that psychic abilities and gifts are real? I know everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, and that's totally okay, but I've always been curious about it. I came from a mom who refused to acknowledge her gifts, mainly due to her fearing them, until recently, and a father who didn't believe in such things at all. So why do some people accept them and others don't? Are they just not awake enough or ready? That's a good question, and I'll start answering that by saying that we're all different. We're all different, period, and we all believe very, very different things. It's like asking why I love bananas and you love limes. We're two very different people. We like different things, and it's okay. I think that people don't... Well, I can't generalize, but I think that there is a group of people that are afraid to admit that these abilities are real, because that changes everything. It changes everything that they know, and they have to start exploring things to really grasp it. It's because it is kind of seems like magic at first until you understand it.
Right.
You know, so a spiritual awakening kind of happens when you start to accept it, and a lot of people are just not, they're just not there. That's just not who they are or what they want, you know. I don't know your dad. I don't think I've done a reading for him or anything like that, but my feeling on it is that he wasn't raised to believe any of that. He was raised to believe it's all hocus pocus. It's fake. It's witchcraft, you know. And your mom, this is the same on my mom's side, because I don't know about my mom having abilities. Like, she may have had some, but my grandma did, and like her sisters and them, and they all totally just denied it because they were afraid of the repercussions that they would face if they admitted it. And that is something that a lot of the like older generations especially believe.
Yeah, there was a lot more social pressure in that area, I think, or fear of ridicule, you know, maybe from their church or their you know, elders, parents, grandparents.
Yeah.
Just a different mentality at that time, for sure. I definitely believe that this sort of turn a blind eye to it isn't going to last forever.
No.
I think that it's just a matter of, and kind of in that realm too, like a spiritual awakening for me was sort of an instantaneous thing almost.
Yeah.
It was like a holy crap.
What just happened? Yeah.
But at the same time, there was a process immediately thereafter of like, I have to deconstruct my way of thinking and my viewpoints on a lot of things that I had for a long time.
Yep.
Because they no longer fit.
Right.
It just, with this epiphany or the spiritual awakening and that immense feeling that goes with it, kind of like Shauna's saying that it's absolute truth.
Yeah.
I had to deconstruct within me. And that takes time.
Yeah.
And some people can have that sort of immediate awakening and kind of an epiphany and then revert back to their old way.
Yeah, for sure.
Because they fear that deconstructing period is too hard. Because now you have to question other things, yourself, your beliefs, what you've been told.
Yeah.
And that can be scary for a lot of people.
It's hard to face yourself, like when you do get into the spiritual awakening. And I think that is a big part of it, because once you realize that these abilities are real, you do start to question other things. And yeah, it can get to be too much. It's like a rabbit hole.
Right.
Like, it's just, woo, where are we going?
Yeah, because once you deconstruct, then you have to reconstruct.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of where I feel like where I'm at. The deconstruct part, I think I've got that.
Yeah.
I've taken most of the ideas and things that were maybe steering me in the wrong direction, and I've reconstructed those now. They fit much better.
Right, yeah.
And they're much more in line with how I feel.
Yeah. And you know what, I think too, like, even for me, up until I really believed myself that these abilities were real, like that I had them, it was hard for me to even grasp that they were real. Like, I had plenty of readings where I was like, no way that it can't be real, because they just knew way too much, way too accurate. But I still needed to have the ability myself before I actually really truly believed it.
Yeah.
And I think that that's because we're kind of brainwashed into believing it's not real. And so we have to have our brain rewired. And sometimes you have to have proof.
Right.
And here I am as the proof that there's no way that this isn't real.
No.
But even I was a skeptic at parts of my life. So, I understand everybody's very different here, and I wouldn't look down on your parents for, their ways of feeling. If my mom was still alive and I was a medium, it would be interesting to see how she would have reacted to that. My grandma too. It would have been really interesting, because they definitely wouldn't have been as accepting as they are from the other side. I think my mom would have thought I was crazy, but everybody's different, and I think we all just have to learn that it doesn't really matter what other people think too about us if we have these abilities and they don't believe we have these abilities. Like, from the beginning of this, I was really worried about people knowing about my abilities. It's like, don't tell anybody. Don't tell anybody. And now it's just out there. It's like who I am, So we grow too. So your parents still, they still have time to grow. Your mom's working on it. So I hope that answers Shauna's question.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Shannon and Shauna.
Thank you, ladies.
And let's see. Now let's do the reading. And so, let's see. Let me find it. So I'm going to do one reading now, and then if we have time at the end, like if we run out of things to talk about on the subject, then I have another one. Otherwise, we'll wait for next week for that one. But this is from Yvette, and I thought that this was important to address and handle. This is my youngest daughter. Her name is Angelina. Her personality has changed so much in the past year. I know part of it is puberty, becoming a teen, but she has also said she sees spirits. What is her gift, and how do I help encourage her? P.S. All the women in my family have gifts that no one knows what to do with. LOL. Thanks in advance. Okay, so I don't do these a lot of times in public because it's an underage person, but Yvette's giving me the permission, so I'm going to go ahead and do it. If this was posted in my group, I would PM the person and do it for them in private, just because it is about a minor. But let's talk a little bit about Nina here. We have a 16-and-a-half-year-old, and so we understand the teenagers. And, at the beginning of her being a teenager, we were like, oh, she's not going to be like every other teenager. And then the things start happening, and you're like, oh, man, we all want to think that. We all want to think, not that we're the perfect parents, but that we did something different that will make their teenagers not act like teenagers. And that's just not the case, because they are all teenagers. Yeah. So, yes, a lot of this that's going on right now with her is self-identity. It's trying to figure out who she is, what she wants. And these abilities can be confusing to an adult, let alone a child. So trying to kind of deal with these abilities at her age is definitely difficult for her.
Yeah.
She does want to be encouraged, but the way that I'm feeling it is she doesn't want it to take over her life, and she doesn't want to be bombarded by spirits and things. This is what it is. She wants to live a normal life. And I get that. Like my brother, he has abilities. I told him that and he was like, no. I think I just want to live a normal life.
That age, you don't really want to stand out.
No.
You do. Yeah. I mean, you want to be looked at as cool and special and unique, but you don't really want to stand out too much.
No, I mean, Timmy's skateboarding down the hallway and you say to your friend, hey, Timmy's going to fall off his skateboard, and then he does. Some of your friends might go, whoa, what just happened? Right. That's not the age that they can handle that yet. So I would encourage her to do it in a gentle way, in a way that it's okay for her to not understand everything about this now, because it is very confusing. Yeah. It's also important for her to know that she can set the rules. Mm-hmm. I feel like sometimes they come to her and it feels very overwhelming for her. Like she doesn't know how to get them out. Like I see her doing homework and it's kind of like voices. I think this is sometimes why people are misdiagnosed as schizophrenic, because it can sound like voices in your head. So she's trying to do her homework, but while she's trying to do that, she's hearing the voices in the background. So she needs to tell those voices, hey, I'm doing my homework right now. Can we not do this? Can we do this later? Or whatever it is, you can set the rules with them. Don't come to me when I'm asleep, whatever it is. I think that it's important for her to know that. Also, something that I'm hearing is if there is, this is probably, I don't know how you'd find this, but if there's a way to find other kids that are like her, that have gifts that she can talk to, maybe there's a group on Facebook that, you can connect with or something, that would help her to understand a little bit better, but to also have those people in her life that are her age, because having adults that have these abilities, or, like your family has these abilities, that's one thing. But when you're a kid, it's a whole different level of things. Like we know that Marina has abilities. She does too, but she still is like, nope.
She's similar to that.
Don't want to talk about it.
I don't want to. And I think with any gift, that a child has, the biggest encouragement you can do is not discourage.
Yes.
Right?
Thank you.
I think in this situation, because this is an extraordinary gift, is you have to, kind of in the vein of like Shauna's question, is you kind of have to put faith in it. Mm-hmm. Like what Samantha said is setting boundaries is a great thing to do, because that happened to her early on, and she had to say, I'll come to you, or I'll let you know when I'm ready.
Yeah.
And then we can talk. And that stopped immediately when she put that boundary out there. But the trusting that they will take care of that.
Yes.
Like her gift will naturally grow as it should, by not discouraging her. But again, she doesn't want to. Have you done any readings today, honey?
Right.
No, you don't want to come in after school and be, forcing this kind of thing on her already. Just don't discourage it. If she comes to you and says, God, I had this really weird conversation with one of them, and, oh, really? What?
Yeah.
Do you want to share it with me? And just encourage her to be open, not deny it.
Right. Yeah. It does feel like she's into it, and maybe doing things like buying her oracle cards or crystals. I'm sure you probably already do some of that, but, encouraging that way more than, I think that when you try and bring in the psychic stuff, especially the psychic stuff, can be really, really overwhelming. And that for a teenager, I can't imagine. So that's probably something too that she has a hard time with. So helping in those ways, encouragement. But I feel like she is a very good kid. She is not, don't worry is the gist of it. Don't worry about her. She's going to do fine. She's going to be great. She is just a normal teenager, but does have these gifts. That's all. Mm-hmm. But the other things that you're seeing, those are normal teenage things. So try not to worry too much. Okay.
Cool.
Yep. So I hope that helped you, Yvette and Nina.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very good.
Very good. All right.
All right.
So shall we do it?
We shall.
Yep.
All right. Episode 126. Roswell, 1947.
1947.
What was going on in Roswell in 1947?
Well, I wasn't personally there.
Right.
Because that was 30 years before I was born. But, I am one of those people that I will say I didn't know much about the topic. I mean, I knew what it was based about. Now, we have listeners that don't know anything about this topic at all. So we're going to do our best to explain what it is, what happened, what we know, that kind of thing. But, it is a very interesting and in-depth topic. And there's a lot of different shows about it. And we actually spent this week watching one, or, part of the week, watching one called, what is it called? Roswell. It's on Discovery Plus. Let me get it for you. It's called Roswell, The Final Verdict. And it's 6 episodes, 1 hour episodes each. The episodes are 1 hour each. And this was very informative to me. And it was definitely eye-opening. I think through the spiritual awakening, I've become to definitely be a believer in aliens, in that there's life on many, many other planets, in other, galaxies, whatever. There's everywhere. There's life everywhere. Right. But this in particular incident, I didn't really know much about. And after watching what we watched and reading what I read, I definitely am a believer that this is not a conspiracy theory, that this actually did happen. So let me give you a little bit of background first on what we're talking about, Roswell, 1947. It began in the summer of 1947. They don't know exactly when the spaceship crashed, but it was sometime in mid-June to early July. And rancher Mac Brazel found wreckage on his sizable property in Lincoln County, New Mexico, which is about 75 miles north of Roswell. At the crash scene, Mac found some aluminum foil type material and rubber and paper, different type materials, things that he had never seen before that kind of reacted weird to the environment. So he took some of those materials to the sheriff to Roswell Sheriff, who in turn took it to the colonel at the Roswell Army Air Force. So that's RAAF for short.
And that was Blanchard, I believe?
That was Blanchard, yes.
Colonel Blanchard.
That was Blanchard, yep.
So he was the head of the Roswell base.
He was the head of the Roswell base. Okay. So then the next day, there was a press release that was issued from this base that a flying disc had been recovered from this crash site. The following day, Roswell Daily Record ran a story about the crash. There were so many stories going on, but there was claim that there was debris from it, and that the U.S. Army quickly reversed the claim. Once it hit the media, the U.S. Army came back and claimed all of this other stuff. Right. I started reading about this a little bit more. I don't know. I have a bad habit of falling asleep while we watch things at night, so this may have been talked about, but what I found is that the government claimed that they didn't tell people that these were balloons. They claimed that they were weather balloons that were found. They claimed they didn't say this before because they claimed these balloons were part of a Soviet spy mission called Project Mogul, which was a covert operation. Right. So because it was a covert operation, they claimed they couldn't say anything about it, but that they were actually weather balloons, and it wasn't a crashed
Well, despite
UFO.
The crash site, there were many witnesses that witnessed the explosion in the sky, besides Mac Brazel. There were many around the counties that gave testimony that they saw the big flash in the sky. So that's not counting the people that actually saw and went to the crash site.
Yes.
If we could just rewind here for a minute and give you an idea of what the state of the country was like at this point, okay? We've got World War II from 1942 to 1945.
I don't remember.
Yes, I believe.
Write it down.
We're in a point now where civilian society is very trusting of government because we've come out of World War II. We've beat the Nazis, the Germans, and we're feeling confident and trustworthy. But there are other incidents happening around the country around this time as well, because right out of World War II, we're now going into the beginnings of the Cold War. Mm-hmm. The Cold War race, meaning nuclear weapons and advancements in that area. I find it a bit interesting that during this time, with this advancement in the technology and the testings that were happening out in New Mexico, the detonations of these atomic bombs and the testings that were happening, along with other sightings, which I believe was the Battle of Los Angeles was 1940.
Yeah, we looked that up. 40, I don't know.
43, 42?
Yeah, 42. I'm pretty sure, yeah.
So 1942 is the Battle of Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. Then we have over the United States, but that might have been the 50s, so I could maybe have that wrong.
I think it was all around the same time. To be really honest with you, the Battle of L.A. and when it happened in Washington. That happened
over Washington more than once, too.
Okay.
So, but yes, these are all kind of happening around the same time. My feeling is these presence of these sightings that we're seeing, the presence of these craft and things, has a lot to do with what we're doing. They're watching us go through a world war. They're watching us test something we know nothing about that's extremely powerful and deadly.
Yeah.
And they're just keeping a close eye. That's kind of my opinion as to what's happened up until this point.
Right.
Then we have Roswell in 1947. Right. Okay. We could all ask why, but that's my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Is like sort of now we're at a point where, okay, the government's admitting to something, but you have to understand, too, that out of World War II, and this was something I brought up to you when we were talking about it, is that as we're getting out of World War II, we are now confiscating a lot of technology from the Germans.
Yeah.
Hitler himself was working on an anti-gravity, or what you might call a UFO.
Yeah. It
was called the Bell. And there was a lot of other stuff. He was really advanced with the radar stuff that to evade radar. So we're getting all this, and we also acquire through the NATO treaty, I think it was, through that, and I might be saying this wrong, but the whole treaty after the war ended, we acquired his top scientist, rocket developer that was working on this Bell and other rockets for the Germans. We acquired him. He went straight to NASA.
Yeah.
And he's the one that developed the first rockets to go for the Apollo missions. Okay? This guy himself said the information that he's been given and learning how to build such vehicles did not solely come just from humans.
Right. Yeah.
He learned it from other things.
Yeah.
So they were on the fast track, and U.S. was like, what do they got going on? Mm-hmm. So now they've acquired all this technological information from the Germans, exiting World War II. They get this scientist to come in and start working for us. Now you have a spaceship that's crashed. And I don't believe the reason for covering it was as much about pandemonium and chaos, because it's the military.
Right. Yeah.
If they're willing to threaten these witnesses in this incident that they'll take their life, why are they worried about a society? They're the military.
Right.
They have everything. I think it was more thinking on a global scale that if we get this technology and we learn about it, we reverse engineer it, figure it out, there'll be no country that can ever take us.
Yeah.
It becomes this paranoid kind of, dominancy. Got to have dominancy over everything.
Right.
And because we were so trusting at the time, I think it was easier to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. And I think honestly that this is one of our biggest downfalls as a society, is that we are way too trusting of our government. We think that they want what's best for us. They don't care. They don't care what's best for us.
Yeah.
And this is a really good story to show that. And, so this special that we watched, let's talk a little bit about the series that we watched. One of the things that was the most eye-opening for me in this series was how our government treated the witnesses.
Right.
Now, in this series, they did something very different.
New.
Yeah, they took testimony, video, interviews. Some I think was just audio, but most of it was video. They took it and they put it through a polygraph that works off of
its voice and face recognition. Mm-hmm. It was designed out of a university in New Hampshire, so they can use it on old video footage, old audio recordings.
Right.
And this software basically predicts whether this person's telling the truth or lying.
Yes.
It's essentially a high-tech polygraph machine.
And it was really cool to watch. Mm-hmm. And because I'm a psychic, I played along. Are they telling the truth or are they not? And most of these people were absolutely telling the truth about either what they saw, what they were told. Like a lot of it was like, my dad told me this, or whatever.
Most of those people are deceased.
They're gone now. So, and then there were some that were false. But one of the things about the false stories that was so interesting was like, what was the guy's name?
It would only be a sentence or one statement within a person's recollection of the story that would be false. The rest of it would show up as true.
Right.
So there were some explanations as to maybe why some of these statements came out false.
Right. Like Dennis Ellis, he was worked in the mortuary there, right? Or
he was not on the base. He was a civilian. He owned and worked at a mortuary.
Right. Okay. So he was. I totally forgot where I was going.
He was contacted by the base, by Blanchard, to purchase 3 small children-sized coffins.
Oh, right.
And he delivered these coffins to the base. They were also asking him questions about how, if we want to preserve a body, what's the best way to do this? So he was sort of having this conversation with them about that. But he eventually did deliver these coffins. He claims to have gotten by security and sort of wandered around the base and the hangar, and more importantly, in the medical area where there was supposedly the dead species were being held, and there was supposedly an autopsy happening on one of them. And he, was kind of warned by a nurse there to get out. You don't want to be caught here, because he was a civilian.
Right.
Even though he was allowed on base. And then he came back a second time to the base, which he claims in his story he was bringing an injured officer back to the base.
Yes, that's what I was
That is the one statement in all of his statements that came up as false and not true.
Yes.
There's a theory that this nurse he brings up that told him to get out of here, he was having relations or knew this person, and he did not want her in jeopardy or him in jeopardy, So basically, he fibs this story.
Right, exactly.
He does come back a third time to try to find this nurse, and she's no longer there. And he's told by another nurse that her and about 5 other nurses, after the whole Roswell, everything kind of calms down, they were killed in a training mission. Yeah.
In a training mission,
yeah,
quote unquote.
I'm sure they put all 5 or however many of those people were doing those autopsies on a plane, and bye-bye.
Right, exactly. So that one line that Dennis Ellis said, basically, about that he was taking an injured soldier to the base was false. And that came up false. And you could see, like, in him, or I could see in him at least, that he started getting nervous about the story. But he didn't know when that was recorded, however many years ago, that it was going to be put through a polygraph.
Right.
So, of course, like, you leave out the part about the nurse, whatever's going on with the nurse, because that, for whatever reason, would have been frowned upon, So that is how specific this polygraph was. Right. There was also a boy or man that was a child when this happened. I can't remember. He
was 5 years old. I don't remember his name.
And he had said that he saw the aliens walking about or whatever.
He said he was sitting up and they would look this way and turn that way and turn this way.
Didn't somebody say, too, that one of the aliens, like, pulled back, like, don't hurt me? Like, put his hands up in front of his face, like, don't hurt me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't remember who shared that.
I think it was the same guy, maybe. I'm not sure. But either way, both of those things came back false. And we were talking about this earlier, and the thing is that childhood memories have a tendency to do that.
Yeah.
Like, let's say that this kid actually did, he was in this incident, saw this alien, but maybe it wasn't walking around, but he thought it would be cool to tell his friends that it was up walking around or doing things. That becomes a memory in his mind because that's what he's told his friends.
He was walking with his father and his uncle, so he was not alone.
Yeah.
And they asked him, what's the first thing you remember as you walked up onto the scene? And he said, I remember my uncle saying, that's a goddamn spaceship. And at first I thought that's such an animated statement.
Yeah.
And that was true.
Yeah.
That was remarkably true. So the other important person in this story, besides Mac Brazel, the ranchers that owned the land that it crashed or the debris was left on. Because you figure it was kind of spread across 2 counties.
Right.
The debris was in Roswell, but it was also in the neighboring county where the main part of the ship crashed, the disc. So you've got Mac Brazel, who then reports it to the sheriff. But then that's reported to the military. The sheriff reports it to the military.
Right.
They send Jesse Marcel, who is the top bomber pilot in the Roswell base, basically. Or as far as I'm concerned, that I don't know if it was the whole army or just that base.
Right.
You figure this is Roswell was like a naval base, but it was meant for planes that drop big bombs.
Yeah.
So they dealt with a lot of technology and equipment. Marcel was the most knowledgeable. So they said, if anybody's going to know what something is mechanically, this guy will know. Mm-hmm. They sent him out. He gathers up a bunch of this debris field and the debris from the field. On his way back to the base, decides to stop home because he knows once I release this to the military, I'll probably never see it again. Yeah. I want to show this to my son. Because he's gonna be just mind blown.
Yeah, mind blown.
And some of the properties of this scrap metal, like Samantha was saying, that probably at a first glance it looked like a crinkled up weather balloon, but it didn't behave like a crinkled up weather balloon. Yeah. They said you could hold it; it was very strong, but you could hold it in your hand and it felt weightless, and you could crinkle it in your hand and let go, and it would flatten itself back out.
Right.
There was some other pieces, small I-beams that had what most of these people describe as hieroglyphic type symbols on it.
Right.
Which, as a matter of fact, in Hitler's diagram of the bell, those symbols are on the same symbols are on the bottom of that bell.
Wow, really?
I noticed this the other day when we were watching it. I'll have to show it to you.
Interesting.
So they send Marcel out there to gather this stuff up. He stops at home, shows his son. He goes now to the base, delivers it.
Yeah.
So now they're getting ready for this big sort of plan of how are we going to, now that meaning we, the military ourselves, have made a statement saying that this thing crashed and it's all over the papers and now the whole country and now the other countries are getting wind of this.
Yeah.
How are we going to reverse this?
Yeah.
So they get Marcel together and say, we need you to go out in front of the press and show them what we've found. And literally, as right before they bring him out there, they tell him, by the way, the story's different. And to this guy, he's thinking, this is my chance, man. Like, yeah. I've worked my way in this military and I've worked my life. I've helped protect this country. They're protecting me as far as he's concerned. Yeah. And he's ushered out into this press room where he sees a weather balloon sitting on the floor.
Yeah.
With the general Hanger? Not Hanger.
Blanchard?
Not Blanchard, the other guy. Ramsey.
Oh, I don't have him on my list.
General Ramsey, who this guy was hired to come in and basically figure out a way to get out of this.
Right.
So he said, we're going to march Marcel out there in the press room with a weather balloon on the floor and make him look like an idiot. The guy that we sent out there to begin with that would know whatever this was, if it was something from this world, he would know it. now they're making this guy look like he doesn't know what he's talking about.
There's a very famous picture.
There's a very famous picture
on his face
where he's squatting. He's not sitting or standing. He's squatting, and he's got his hands on. He's holding it, and he's looking up at the cameras like, really?
Yeah.
And next to him is General Ramsey, who's holding a teletype statement in his hand, a piece of paper. Well, through technology now, we're able to zoom in on these photographs and zoom so close in on this piece of paper that 2 lines could be made out.
Right.
Digitally, basically saying crash of a disc and disposing of the bodies. Mm-hmm. This is in the photograph of Jesse Marcel being humiliated in front of the whole country. Yeah. This guy now goes from being a top-notch know-it-all to a guy that's being a laughing stock of the military.
Yeah. Yep.
And his career was basically done at that point.
It's really sad.
He spoke many years later. He's one of the guys in this. There's probably about 5 people, more than that, but at least 5 solid people that they get testimony from, and they run this analysis, lie detection analysis on them. Yeah. And everyone, with the exception of maybe 2 or 3 statements out of the whole group, come up false, but everything is true.
Yeah.
Anything regards to seeing it,
the
matter, the debris, the species that were aboard it, all that comes back true.
Absolutely.
It's some of these finer details that people are nervous about, their lives and their families' lives.
Right.
And that, for instance, let's go back to Mac Brazel now. He is now, military comes back to his ranch. They apprehend him. They incarcerate him. The man has done nothing wrong. He's put in a cell in Roswell with no food and water. He's subjected to, because through World War II, they've learned a lot of mind tricks. And so he's subjected to sleep deprivation. So every time he starts to fall asleep, they're waking him up to the point where he's ready to crack. And then they take him down to make a statement when he's totally lucid and doesn't know kind of what's real and what's not because he's so tired.
Yeah.
They take him down to the local radio station where he had done an original interview with the radio station telling the whole truth, but it wasn't live on the air. It was pre-recorded.
Yeah.
So the military now takes him back down there after this whole interrogation and keeping him, I think he was in there a good 6 days, 6 or 7 days, until they got this whole thing, the new press release, knocking everything, reneging it all. They finally take him down to do a new live on the air interview with the same guy he did this interview with previously 6 days before. There are gentlemen that actually escort Mr. Brazel to this interview.
Yeah.
These men are what we would call the Men in Black.
Men in Black, yeah.
They are there solely hired by deep state government to cover this thing up and quiet anybody that saw anything or will talk. And that meant they personally visit these people in their homes. They threaten them either by themselves or in front of their family members.
Yeah.
One girl at 12 years old gives testimony that she watched her father basically threatened and her threatened in front of them.
They said they would kill his kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
Part of one of her statements came out false, and I don't remember what that was. But again, when you're young,
it's hard to remember.
There's a lot of trauma, and you don't really understand what's happening.
Yeah.
But so he gave this interview under the scrutiny of the Men in Black standing in there. At the end of the interview, the interviewer went into the booth where they were sitting, where he was giving the interview, because the guy's in the control room and Max in the sound room. He goes in to put away the microphone and everything, and he goes, "Man, what happened to the other story you told me a few days ago?
Yeah.
It's completely different. What about all the little green men?" He goes, "It's not the same." And Mac's response because now they were in a different room and the men in black are not standing in the same room. All he says to the guy is, yeah, except they weren't green.
Yeah.
And he goes, I knew that was Mac's way of telling me I'm being suppressed.
Yeah.
I can't talk about this, but it is true.
Yeah.
And he even, after he was released, after he gave that interview, he went back to the jail where he stayed for another couple more days until they finally got this whole new press release out and they felt confident that the whole story was stifled. He was released, went back home. His son asked him, what was that all about? And he said, nothing. Just a bunch of you know what? You're better off not even knowing.
Yeah.
He was so scared. He wouldn't even talk to his family anymore.
Do you blame him?
Yeah.
You know? And that's what I mean by trusting our government, is watching that show and realizing that they did these things to people because their polygraph test, that's coming back on the polygraph, as it's true.
Yeah.
I don't doubt for a second our government did these things, because if they threaten you with your life, of course you're not going to go talk. So, you know, then on their deathbed, people talk. And
they also said that Mac, and some of this testimony is his neighbor, a lady. She was an elderly lady.
Yeah.
But all of her statements were true.
Yeah.
That she said he went away and came back with a brand new truck, and he had money to start his own business. So not only did they do this, you know, intense mind game thing with him, but they paid him off.
They paid him off. Well, at least he got that, you know.
Yeah, at least he did get that.
Better than nothing.
For that whole thing. But there was another person that wasn't mentioned in this documentary that I was reading about. Was a lady named Matilda Mcelroy, who records show she was a nurse on the Roswell base at the time of the crash. She, at 80 years old, came out and finally said, I can't take this to my grave. I have to share this. And she talked about seeing all the same stuff that we're talking about right now. But she went further as to discuss the species, the aliens themselves.
Right.
And she said there were, and this is an ongoing thing in this show we were watching, is there's 4 bodies, there's 3 bodies. Somebody says there's 4, somebody says there's 3.
Right, yeah.
The 4th one, which the little 5-year-old boy who saw, one was alive.
Yeah.
There were some other people that were brought into this story that also saw them alive. One was a soldier that was guarding the outside of the hangar where they were being stored. He was told that he needed to stand inside and guard. And he was walking and looking at them, and he could see one moving under the tarp.
Yeah.
Then they brought in, I can't remember what his title was, but he was New Mexico's lieutenant general or some sort of political office. Mm-hmm. They brought this gentleman in there, and he also saw them moving under the tarp. Mm-hmm. And he told his assistant, who later on gave testimony, which came out true as well, that yes, they were dead ones and there was a living one.
Right.
So in Matilda Mcelroy's story, she's a nurse on this base. She is there when they bring them in, and they're doing the autopsy on one of them. Not much is really known about that, as far as we know. There is one more episode we haven't gotten to,
watched it yet about that.
So not much has been released really about that, but she gets into detail about the living one. Uh-huh. And that says this thing spoke to me telepathically. It did not have a mouth. She described it very similar to the way most of us have heard as big heads, short creatures, very large heads, big, darker eyes inset. But we always see pictures of them with a mouth.
With a mouth, yeah.
Dolores talks about this in convoluted universe about other species and other worlds, that there are some creatures, they don't need to eat. They don't have a mouth.
Right.
And they're very intelligent. They live solely off the energy of the universe. Mm-hmm. The good.
Right.
Isn't that weird? Nice. Like they're living off the positive energy.
Yeah.
So she said this thing didn't speak to her with its mouth. It spoke telepathically. And she asked it questions like, how long have you been here? Mm-hmm. And its answer was way before humans were ever here.
Yeah.
These things kind of come back to me now. It's like, okay.
Yeah, for sure.
where did we come from? Where did they come from?
Right.
And there was some other things that she shared that I don't exactly remember, but I really felt they did talk about something about where they were concerned about us. They were watching us because they're concerned of what we're doing.
Right.
And the threat that it poses to not just this planet.
Yeah, the whole universe.
But it's a resounding echo effect
Yeah.
that once this one goes, it's going to go and affect a lot of things.
Absolutely,
So,
it will. Yeah.
especially if there's nuclear warfare. And I'll
Right.
tell you this, if we do it to ourselves and do our own planet in, that's one thing. They will not tolerate it in space.
No, definitely
They
not.
won't.
Mm-mm.
And we have proof of that.
Yeah.
We've seen warheads being shut down,
Yeah.
like systematically shut down one by one
Yeah.
to not be able to be armed and do anything. And these were warheads that would go out of the atmosphere and then re-enter the
Yeah.
atmosphere. They don't even want to take a chance of one of those exploding in space before it re-enters, even though it's not meant to maybe go and fight anybody in space. But now
Right.
you're reading stuff on Facebook that now we have the Marines have their own space force.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, so we're going to take all this baloney and angst and anger and fighting out off this planet?
Right. Yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Let's not
If
do
we
that.
have a different approach once we step off this planet, I don't think we'll have a lot of problems.
Right.
It's if we take the same mentality leaving this planet and try to go forge new frontiers,
Right.
we're going to have huge problems.
Right.
It'll never work.
Yeah. You know, something that I found interesting that I wanted to talk about real quick while we have time is when I was doing this research, I usually go to Wikipedia to get some of my information. And
Yeah.
that was one of the first places that I went for this. And I want to read what it says on Wikipedia when you look up Roswell.
You should.
This is what it says. The Roswell Incident is the 1947 crash of the United States Army Air Force balloon at a ranch near Roswell, New Mexico, and the subsequent conspiracy theories claiming that the crash involved a flying saucer and that the government covered it up. So basically, right there, Wikipedia is telling you that it was not what it actually is.
Yeah.
So it's a liar. You know, I'm psychic.
Yeah.
And I'm not rubbing that in,
Right.
but I can tell you that this is real. That I can read pictures. Like, I look at a picture and I can tell you about the person in the picture. But I can also look at a picture and I can tell you what the person was thinking at that moment.
Right.
And I can tell you that, what was his name?
Dennis? Ellis?
No, Jesse Marcel.
Oh, okay.
That picture of him holding that weather balloon was absolutely him going, what the F?
Yeah, he was in a total state of shock.
What in the F? This is not what I found. This is a weather balloon, not, you know?
He even went back after and tried to have a new report made because he knew his reputation had been so tarnished, and they told him, let it go.
Right.
Shut it down,
Yeah.
let it go.
But my question is, why is this so hard to believe? Why do we turn around and believe our government over these people that saw it, that were there, that experienced it? Why do we believe the government going, it was a weather balloon, let it go, over those people?
Right.
There's probably a lot of reasons. One of them is fear. You know, we're afraid of, what does that mean? If we actually know that there's other creatures out there, what does that mean? Do we have to put ourselves on guard? And the government probably thinks that, you know, then the people are going to go crazy, which they saw that they did in the Battle of Los Angeles. When people thought UFOs were coming here to take us out, they started shooting in the air and going crazy.
Right.
So, of course, the government is going to be like, don't tell them the truth. But we're just being suppressed of what's actually out there. And more and more people are seeing the truth and realizing that we are being lied to.
Yeah.
And this is one instant. And we are lied to about a lot of alien activity. And and we talked about this yesterday a little bit, that sometimes when we talk, I see different things. And we were talking about this, and one thing that I saw was a spaceship that there were two different things about it. One had mirrors all around it.
Yep.
so you couldn't see the spaceship. It was basically like you see the reflection of the sky, so that it blends in with the sky. And the other is one that's completely invisible because they have the technology to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now they've learned how to make it so we can't see them like that, but we can still see them if they want us to,
right.
And I'm sure that there are lots and lots and lots of instances of the government not telling us what they know because they're afraid.
And I don't think it's by mistake that we see and hear so many accounts from eyewitnesses, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to get our attention without scaring us.
Right.
We're the ones scaring us.
Right.
We're listening to people that are going, there's an army of UFOs out there just waiting to kill us.
Right.
How the hell do we know that?
How do we have any proof of that? Why do we even think that? Because of movies, because of what our government's told us. But you know what? If we were actually open and accepting and loving, they would come here and we'd be friends.
There's no story in man's history ever of being attacked by another civilization from another world. Mm-hmm. There's not. And we have so many legends and stories that have been passed down.
Yeah.
There is plenty of stories and documentation that they exist.
Yes.
Okay?
And maybe that they helped us even.
And that they helped us. Yeah. I'll give you an example. The Great Pyramids of Giza. Some of those ruins you can go... used to be able to go into. I don't know anymore. But you could go in and kind of tour the inside. Well... one of these areas in this big chamber had these hieroglyphics high up on these near the ceiling. These had been plastered over.
Yeah.
And during, whatever time and weathering, the plaster started falling. And there's been photographs taken of these hieroglyphics that show helicopters.
Yeah, the ones underneath.
Boats.
The real ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Spaceships.
Yeah.
Things that you wouldn't be able to explain then.
Yeah.
That we think didn't exist then.
Yeah.
There's also a big plaque in front of, I think it's either in front of the pyramids or somewhere like in Israel where it supposedly explains how all this happened. Uh-huh. And that's been covered up.
Right.
And the government won't allow anybody to see what's written on this stone.
Yeah.
So... this makes you wonder if it's just America or if there is not a deep-seated government, like a national government, but a deep-seated global government that is either paranoid themselves or feels like we need to have power over people, and this is part of that. Because I think if we accept this as reality... we have to rethink, deconstruct what we've been taught and learned, and reconstruct based on new evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay?
Absolutely.
This world is so old, there's so much shit underneath us that we don't know, and just digging, and that alone is going to reveal new answers every day.
Absolutely.
There's still new answers about the pyramids. I mean, new questions about the pyramids.
People
new
still
answers.
think those are tombs.
Right. Or the Sphinx. Like, they say there's nothing inside of it. They said that there was a hatch on the top, and they say, no, there's no hatch on the top. And now you can go to Google Earth and clearly see there's a hatch at the top of the head. I mean, how are we going to keep lying to everybody and then have to retract our lies?
Right.
Now we're looking at this Air Force video that came out over the last couple years of these two pilots talking to each other, chasing this thing that they say is going some ridiculous speed against the wind, is going thousands of miles an hour, and they can't explain it. Why is the government so willing to discuss this now?
Right.
Is this a way to admit what happened in Roswell, or will they always just kind of discredit that?
I don't know.
And they'll just introduce this now as the new Roswell, and we're going to start letting it out of the bag little by little.
Probably, because then they have to face that they lied.
Right.
And I doubt that they're going to do that.
We also have to look at what kind of advancements happened after 1947 within our own technological advancements.
Right.
Plastics and aluminums and things like, that we didn't know about.
Right.
And I'm not saying that a scientist in a lab can't figure a lot of this out, but something from another world that crashes that you can reverse engineer can sure help you too.
Absolutely, it could. Yep.
And
absolutely.
So I definitely, I don't believe it was a hoax.
No, it's not a conspiracy.
It's not a conspiracy.
It bothers me it's even called that.
Yes, and there's a lot of people here seeing some of these elderly people that were being interviewed and how much they were discredited and discounted by their own government, that they looked almost defeated.
Yeah.
But I'm
sad.
really happy when we do have technological advancements like this that can come along so many years later and, vindicate those people.
Right.
And their truths.
Right.
And that they're not, because they weren't that old when it happened.
Yeah.
They're just that old recollecting it.
Yeah.
But their statements were taken back then, and they were taken later on, too.
Yeah.
The one gentleman, Ellis, I believe, they said hours worth of interviews.
Yeah.
That they had to look through and run this software on him.
Yeah, that was a lot of work.
He was consistently telling the truth, except the issue about the nurse.
Yeah, exactly. I would highly recommend it for anybody that has Discovery Plus. It is also on Hulu if you have the highest subscription on Hulu.
Yeah.
I saw that.
It's scary. It's scary to think that, we're coming out of a world war and we're talking about the Gestapo and the Nazis and the Germans like they're the devils.
Yeah.
And then we come in and we literally do the same stuff to our own citizens.
Yeah.
When they're literally bringing information to the military like, here, please look at this and help us, protect us.
Yeah.
Tell us what this is.
Yeah.
And these guys are barging in the homes of these people like the Gestapo and the Secret Service and all these really scary groups and threatening their life.
It's very sad.
For sharing truth.
Yeah.
Truth that could have probably helped us all.
Yeah, absolutely it could, but we're just so afraid of whatever
we're
afraid of.
And another interesting, real quick point before we end this is that they discuss later on, towards the end, that all this stuff is no longer sitting in Roswell.
No.
It's now been moved to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, I believe, which is the home and is built on the field that the Wright brothers did their first flight. Mm-hmm. I think that was more of a nostalgic move. Yeah. Like, let's keep everything that flies in this area. Mm-hmm. But there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of focus on, Wright-Patterson and what's there. What can they house?
Right.
You figure gathering up a bunch of scraps from a crash site and that kind of debris is one thing. But there was an actual disc that had to be transported.
Yeah, where is it? Yeah.
Where'd that go?
Yeah. That's a great question. And how did it get there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, literally, they said they drove this thing across a covered truck.
I bet, yeah.
But you couldn't fit this disc in a covered truck. The debris you could, and the bodies, but not this disc.
The disc, yeah. I don't know. It's another mystery.
Yeah. But anyway, so
yay.
There's our
Roswell.
There's our shtick on Roswell.
Yeah. I enjoyed watching that show.
I did too.
And learning about it. It's always interesting to see these different things of our history,
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to knock anybody's beliefs, but I got to say, if you think that we're the only thing alive in this universe, that's pretty naive.
Yeah, it's something I think that comes along with the spiritual awakening. Right. Like for me, I had a good friend that it was a babysitter actually of my brother, but I, trusted her. I believed her, and she said that she saw a UFO, and after she said that, I was like, okay. You were my trusted friend. Now you've seen a UFO and you're lying. That we're talking like the 90s. And now I'm like, damn, she probably really did see a UFO. Yeah. But we just need to learn and expand our minds and not be so like shut down to what could possibly be out there, because the truth is we don't know. Right. And to think that we do know is just very naive. Yeah. It's naive. So
it is.
Yep.
Well, that was awesome.
Yeah. Fun.
Good job, babe.
Good one. Yeah, you too.
Well, before we say goodbye to all of our friends, would you like to share your information?
Sure. So you can find me on my website, SamanthaJonesPsychicMedium.com. You can email me for an appointment beyondthebridge11@gmail.com. Or if you'd like to reach us at the show to send us show suggestions, comments, questions, anything you have, that is spiritualjoneses@gmail.com.
Very good.
And for you.
Thank you. Yes, for me, djonesartcollection.com for the web, for my art, at djonesartcollection for Instagram and Facebook, and for the music, gypsybrown.com for the web, at Gypsy Brown Music for Instagram, and at Gypsy Brown Band for Facebook.
Yay.
And that's it.
Great.
We're about 3 weeks away from the really, really, really big show.
Yeah. Is it 3 weeks?
Well, we have 2 more rehearsals, so it's like 2.5 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks.
It's getting there. Close.
Yeah.
Yep.
So we're getting there. We're excited.
Fantastic, yeah.
Hope everybody can make it that's around locally.
Yeah.
And those that aren't.
Yeah, we'll put up videos.
Feel you.
Yeah,
you'll
sure.
you'll see videos and stuff.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great.
Well, we hope everybody has got something out of this.
That we do.
And we hope everybody has a great week. Until next week.